Decentralize all the things. Decentralize all the things.
Hey there! Welcome to the Web3 Summit Decentralize Now podcast series, hosted by the Decentralize All The Things podcast network. This series features discussions about decentralization from the 2018 Web3 Summit held in Berlin, Germany. This is episode 16. In this bonus Fishbowl episode, we bring you a continuation of last week's compelling discussion about open source development. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Just in case the live stream wants to listen in, actually, I didn't ask you about this before, but Miko, talk a bit about that project that you guys are working on. Super cool.
Yeah, so the idea there is so you have the concept of Gitcoins, where you can have incentivization for performing these small tasks, and the idea is so you have the concept of a DICO, so it's sort of a managed version of a DAO sort of structure, or a DAO linked to an ICO. So the idea was to sort of create a wrapper around Gitcoin that sort of acts more like I wouldn't call it a management layer, but sort of a structure, structuring a group of these issues together, but adding the extra functionality, because we were in the discussion earlier, people were talking about incentivation built into a protocol, you sort of mint extra tokens that are rewarded to either an association or a foundation that sort of supports a project. It was sort of a similar idea, that for each issue that gets funded and gets executed, that you would also mint project tokens for that specific project, and so thereby adding a reward model, not only to the people that actually are funding that issue. So it's like an ICO model, in the sense that people that are actually sending in crypto to fund the project, they receive a project token in return, right? So it's an ICO model, but it's more gradual. So it's continuously wrapped around all the contributions that are being done on one project, and that's sort of the idea. But it's really pretty simple. It's actually just a sort of a Trello board wrapped around the functionality of a fund, so you can sort of fund the cards on the Trello board. That's basically it, but with the additional feature that instead of just managing it, whatever goes through that board creates tokens as a reward, not only for the people that are sponsoring the issues, so the sort of the investors in the project, but also the people that actually contribute. So the person actually doing that Gitcoin issue in this case, he would also get a portion of these minted tokens. So both parties get rewarded, sort of. Yeah, that was the idea.
Yeah, thank you. And how do you feel about it?
So there are currently two iterations going on. So one is it's called EatCan. So it's based on WeCan, and so there's now they're requesting for getting some grants to actually execute the project. But it's more generic in the sense that it's not a wrapper around Gitcoin as such. It's just a generic thing where you can create issues and you can fund them. And there's a second iteration called MICO, which is an abbreviation of the meritocratic ICO. Yeah, so MICO project it's called. I can send you the link later. And so the purpose there is it's similar. So it's also a Trello board style, but instead of just self-creating these cards, it's just a wrapper around Gitcoin. And the idea there is that you can also leverage the community that's already on Gitcoin. So from the perspective from somebody who just want to collaborate, it just comes on Gitcoin, and so he can either do a traditional Gitcoin issue, where he will get some ERC20 token or some ETH for that, or they also could take on one of these issues, execute it, and not only would they get the rewards that's on Gitcoin, but additionally to the same address, they will receive some project tokens for that project. That's the idea. Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, good.
Maybe just a quick Gitcoin question. Are there sort of attributes or skill attributes associated, like tags maybe, to say this ticket is a technical one, or this ticket is around content, or this one is around solidity? Is there some pre-classification of tickets?
Yeah, currently we kind of classify them just very broadly by, so is this a feature? Is this just a general improvement? Is this sort of like documentation related? Is it related to the like security of the project in some way? We're definitely looking to make, and we do sort of like generally describe, is this something you feel is like kind of intermediate difficulty, advanced difficulty, just so that people are sort of aware of what they're walking into. Yeah, we also give them like a rough time estimate. So we say like, the bounty is good for 3 months. We expect it to take, in the range of days or weeks or, and so forth. So that gives people some context. Yeah, because, and everyone that actually uses the project, like we want to make sure that they actually understand how to spec out issues properly. So we work with them really closely because that's a big open source problem. Yeah, well, and not just that, but like, often you won't have proper acceptance criteria. You won't have proper like detailing of an issue, and that leads to people not really understanding, like especially like new contributors, what they should be working on. So just trying to make sure that there's that specification so that people can jump in and like become like proficient pretty quickly with the repo and understand what the requirements are. Often that gets lost in the rush of like just putting up 1,000 different issues. So we work with maintainers pretty closely on that front.
I think for people new to open source, I think Adrian was that example, saying, well, I don't know where to begin. Where can I contribute a line of code? There's also perhaps a bit of fear or a bit of, like the first time you do something openly, it's a bit intimidating. And perhaps also to subscribe to a ticket and say, oh, I want to do this ticket. If that's immediately publicly visible, that could be a bit of an intimidation because you're saying, oh, I want to do this, but maybe you're not ready to start it. But perhaps a way of having like a soft start where you can privately start it. And if you get to doing a bit, then you can go and say, okay, now share. And that way you can have a bit of a dry run for contributing. You'll know what it looks like. You know what you're in for. I think that'll just help other new people ease into it. Just a thought.
Yeah, I like that idea. In general, just providing clear, like the way that that's sort of done now, I guess, is like in just providing clear guidelines, like a contributing.md doc and so forth. But like having an actual like run through of some kind would be great. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So one of the panels yesterday, I think it was on the Aragon presentation. So the talk was about like also opening up accountability for like spending funds, right? So that everything's out in the open. I think it sort of relates to what you said. Like, I think it's difficult for people to just like jumpstart in that mode. And I think certainly when it's about like dealing with money, I think that's, yeah. I mean, there's sort of this taboo. Like, I'm not like telling you or asking you how much you earn. Like, what's your wage? I mean, it's sort of a social thing that you're not like all that open about that. And I think it's sometimes might be a long stretch for people to expect for someone who wants to collaborate on that to be immediately so open about that. So now, of course, it's difficult because like either you're public about it or you're not. There's no way in between. You also, it's not sustainable if like a few people are open on it and other people are not open on it. But I'm just wondering, so in theory, it's okay. I mean, those things technically will work, right? My only question would be, is everybody going to accept it? And isn't it going to be like, or is it going to restrain like the sort of the contribution of people? So if you're like, okay, I might have the skills and the capabilities to contribute like spending money for a project. I might do that in an efficient way, but I might be too sort of too scared of the repercussions by publishing whatever I'm doing, Does that make sense?
So you're kind of talking to the point of how do you have this transparency while also protecting, like, I mean, I guess, this goes back to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Maybe I'll ask it in a question format, so it might be clear. So I think there's an opportunity for, if you collaborate on open source, to sort of gradually roll into that, because you can start by doing a very small issue. Like, I could sort of do a pull request and correct a typo in a README file, for example. That's very the risk for me for screwing up is very low. but I'm already starting to build up some credibility in a community, right? Using the tools, but directly managing money for a project, like it sort of seems like a much bigger responsibility and a much bigger risk for being taken accountable for spending someone else's money. So that would be my question. So is there a way of doing that sensibly with money from a project? Like, is there some sort of onboarding process or a ramp up where people could participate? Because I see that in open source. Would it also work in with the financials of a project? That would be my question.
I mean, I think it definitely could. I definitely like the idea in open source of having contributors sort of start small with projects, and we sort of encourage that so that, you get a handle on what the code base is like, you understand sort of what you need to do, and it makes it way easier for the contributor down the road to work on larger issues. And eventually, like, the goal there is like that they can become maintainers of the project or like core contributors. But in the case of funding transparency, like I guess like there's not really a skill barrier there in the same way, I guess, like to be transparent about how your project is spending money. I would actually argue that like being fully transparent about finances from like the start is like almost always the best option in my mind, unless there's like some serious like security risk in specifying certain line items or something. Like if you're revealing some like serious problem that like is a threat to like the overall business model. And that being said, like that threat should be something that's like not just to do with, oh, it will look bad for the company or it's some kind of it has some negative repercussion. It should be like something serious on like a common scale, like at like a community level. And I don't see in 99% of cases like that probably isn't necessary. Like it's probably not that critical. So that would be my perspective on it.
Yeah, going to the point around the sort of easy task and working your way up. I mean, I'm guessing there'll be psychologists that will hear a lot of our conversations and go, yeah, this is how you do it kind of thing. And gamification of it, like fixing a typo. And I think even prior to that first kind of active engagement is attending, like logging in, visiting. You've read 3 issues, get a little badge, bing, get a little neurons fire, or what do you call that? The dopamine reward, is it? When you like sort of like the likes, when you hear the bing, you hear the pop, and then people get that response. It's almost the same thing. Maybe you want to clock up the rewards for logging in, rewards for reading them, then a reward for doing it. And then something in the education system in Australia, and again, it's nothing new, it's called differentiated learning. So within the one classroom, you have a blend of abilities, and you want to somehow cater for all of them. And what I've done before with sort of technical content for non-technical people is just having sort of like a terrain of knowledge available. So there are low entry barrier things, and then there are more complex things, all available to everyone who can access it. And just to bring that into, say, the Gitcoin model, just knowing there is that diverse range of bounties is almost the supply side of a two-sided marketplace. And showing that there's rewards for this level. You're on level 1, log in 2 more times, you get level 2. Do your first typo fix, you get this badge. And then you can show in advance maybe the path. And if someone wants to just immediately level up, maybe they just do it more quickly. They do the grind work because they don't mind. They'll quickly level up. I don't know, that could be an external thing, like a plugin that someone adds over the top of.
You could also look at verified claims, given that there's loads of places spitting them out, like futurelearn.com and stuff like that. So that's a handy accreditation. Your Gitcoin, is it? Yeah, so I like that idea. I've just come in late.
For sure, yeah. I wanted to also introduce you guys. So we have someone here from Colony as well. Colony is a really cool project in this space that is doing some interesting work in this area. Actually, I believe, what project are you working on, actually? I'm curious. Okay. I was like, you actually seemed familiar, and I was like, not sure if you were actually part of. Okay, that's possible. A thing previously. Okay. Yeah, one sec. I'll let you.
I just want to jump in real quick because you were talking about like skill sets and particular categories, and also earning badges, and talking about like credibility and accessibility and things like that to particular tasks. And I think within the open source community, if there is some sort of way to establish some sort of credibility on like what skill level you're at, it definitely helps gain that trust when you're trying to work on larger issues, especially if it's dealing with security or tokens or some financial exchanges or some sort. And so one thing that Colony is doing is we're building a reputation system, and we're building out these tasks, and you're gaining a reputation when you're earning the tasks. And we're looking for other projects to collaborate with and work with, and potentially modularize our reputation system and find ways that people can build reputations within a particular domain or with a particular skill set, which gives them some sort of credibility to gain access to maybe more difficult tasks or issues or things like that. So just wanted to put that 2 cents in there, because we really like what Gitcoin's doing. We've like looking on ways to collaborate with them, and we're also doing our own thing. Everyone's kind of entering the space from different angles and shooting for the same thing. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, so I work for Swarm City for the project, and yeah, so it might be interesting to add to the conversation how we look towards reputation and identity, because we sort of so the statement that we are making is that your identity is sort of the sum of all your actions within a certain context. And I'll quickly elaborate on what we mean by that. Is that so you as an individual, we think it's very difficult to have something like an overall reputation, because like your behavior depends on the situation where you're in. Like if I would be like in a very like in a business context, for example, I would probably behave different to people than if I'm after my sport event, I go to the bar and I behave in a totally different way. And so the actions that I perform like in the bar might be counterproductive if I would perform the same actions like in that business context, and vice versa. So I think in the reality is that people already so in their lives they have some sort of different identities depending sort of circles, right? And so in that sense, so you could say like reputation, if you want to combine reputation throughout these different circles, we say like it's difficult, because like what's good in that context might be bad in another context. So does that add to your global reputation, or does it decrease your global reputation? So we tend to say like, okay, you can just have like different identities. So you can literally have like different accounts in different marketplaces in Swarm City. And instead of like tracking reputation, so having other people vote on whether an action was good or bad for your reputation, we just say, no, this is just a sum of all your actions. Whatever you've done is like a positive point sort of in your reputation in that specific context, in that circle. So, and I don't know if that's resonates with the way you guys are looking into that.
It definitely resonates. One way that the way that the reputation works within Colony is there's the meta colony, which is basically the entire network, which you're gaining a reputation and getting reputation points deducted from, as well as within each individual colony, which is representative of an organization or a community of some sort. And then also you're gaining reputation within domains that are built within each organization. And you're also gaining reputation within a particular skill, which is part of the whole network. So essentially, if you're a JavaScript developer and you're completing an issue in JavaScript, you could gain reputation within that skill, which is recognized in the entire network. And that goes towards your reputation within the organization, which you're contributing to as well. And if that's within a domain, it goes to that domain as well. But it's allowing you to, one, kind of gain ownership and become part of this open organization within a particular domain, but also gaining skills and recognition. So if you want to work within multiple organizations, you're able to transfer over that reputation and people can recognize it within other domains. I really like the idea of multiple identities, and that's something I need to think about a little bit more, but I would love to continue the conversation on that.
Cool. Yeah, sure.
You were talking earlier about like sort of stepping up some sort of a ladder of like how do you, maybe leveling up. Yeah, leveling up. Yeah. So one of the sort of the underlying ideas how we sort of created or organizing the Swarm City project is inspired by the book of Rick Valkvinge, which is called Swarmwise. And Swarmwise from Rick Valkvinge, the creator of the Pirate Party. Yeah. So he describes a model how to like organize like a sort of an open source group of people. So they applied it to start like a political party. So they sort of apply an open source model into creating that. So it's also interesting to see that. So for funding all that stuff that needs to be done, he actually encourages like the offloading of all these tasks to like a large crowd of people. So instead of going to a print shop to have like all these the flyers printed out, they just send around the PDFs and they ask everybody just to print like 10 copies on their own printer. So they really offload all the costs and the work to the. So that's how they work. But it's also interesting for like stepping up on that ladder is that he suggests to sort of create an organigram of your organization, but make it empty. So create a structure, but don't fill in any names. And then you everybody can collaborate. So they don't have to ask permission to start collaborating on doing any of these tasks. But he provides like the framework to say like this is how it should be structured, but we're not there yet. And so at a certain point, somebody will start acting upon a certain task, and then other people will suggest him or like push him forward to say, yeah, his name should be there on the organigram, right? And that's how it works. And then if that person starts to get like less involved in the project, like you see like sort of erosion in open source too, that people contribute for a while and then their interest diverts away, and so they stop being active or they get less active in a project. It's the same thing. So their name will disappear from the organigram because there's someone else stepping up and taking over these tasks. But it's the interesting thing is that it becomes sort of clear for newcomers because they can see the organigram, but it's not like there's no single person assigning names to the organigram. It's just, but it provides some clarity towards newcomers where they should go to, so they know like I want to contribute something like in the PR department, so to speak. So they directly know how to who to go to. So it's pretty. So it's sort of a non enforced organization model, sort of that provides some clarity for newcomers, and I also think that's pretty interesting.
I watched that talk by regarding Swarmwise, and I think he, as well as I didn't know about that placement thing, so that's really good to know. But also just having the kind of array of tasks just sort of up there, just to say, hey, we need flyers. Here's a task, and again, that was probably what Gitcoin looks like. It's like, just an array of tasks up there that people can grab. I was going to say something else about the ramp point as well. Can't remember now. Damn it! Sorry, lost it. But yeah, I'll pass on the mic then.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, the entire concept of flat organizations or just like very free-form organizations is very interesting. Like the concept that we talk a lot about in Gitcoin, because like it's sort of what we facilitate in some ways, or what open source in general has facilitated, is like this ability to create flash organizations and like to have these sort of emergent entities that are sort of created for a particular task and sort of like pop up for some very small period of time and then like submerge again, and it's just sort of this constant flow of different smaller organizations that coordinate as needed. I think this is probably almost like, to go more philosophical, like the way that organizational structures are moving, and you can see this over time from like even like the early 1900s, like from like these large corporations to these much more fluid and more dynamic, smaller organizations that may not even have like a formal corporate structure, like as we're seeing in this space. Like you may just have a DAO or some other kind of software entity managing that process. I think that's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, I sort of went from mostly engineering jobs, which were sort of pretty much full-time jobs. And then when I started contracting, then I got the sense of that fluidity and dynamic as an individual. And I did this project where I was doing the tech support for another industry, which was around filming and advertising, but they were doing a lot of cool tech with the advertising kind of thing they were presenting. And in that community, people were just so used to that swarm together for a moment and then disperse. And I just literally, I'm visualizing swarms, the way an individual or a group of people will join together, look like one big thing, do that, but then just dissipate again and just go somewhere else and then reform a different shape, a different direction, and push in a certain way. And just to see that in that other industry, and that was just the norm for them, was quite an eye-opener for me. And to go from, again, I think of the personas out there, that people who are comfortable with full-time work and perhaps only know full-time work would be like, this is scary. But we maybe we're used to it. We've seen it. We're so used to that dynamic. But
just briefly, you see it in Hollywood all the time when people come together to put movies together, and then they go apart. They go their separate ways, and then they reap the benefits of that entity that they created. They have equity, they have salaries, but then they walk away and then they do their next thing. So yeah.
So there are two models that are interesting. Are you guys familiar with Dash? Yeah, Dash. So Dash is a treasury model, right? Whereby 10% of all coins go to a treasury. And what's interesting is that anyone can put projects on, right? It can be a wallet. So someone can say, hey, I want to be a wallet, right? And people can vote to see whether they want a wallet or not, right? Or they can, the funny ones, like can be a Twitter campaign, can be like advertising, or can be like, hey, I want to do an event, in like in some random in like Zimbabwe or something, and then people actually vote to say yes, right? It's just really interesting stuff. It's actually interesting because like in the bounty system that Gitcoin does, right? It is like we are kind of assuming that the corporation knows what to do, right? And knows how to prioritize, right? But actually, I think what's interesting is that like is that the community kind of decides what is a priority, and they vote with their pocket, So I think that model is actually interesting. I haven't seen that around that much, but I think we should though. It's actually a very interesting model, right? Whereby some part of the ICO proceeds or whatever and stuff goes to a much more like I mean, it's interesting because the centralized party can still control most of the funds, but I think it's reasonable to have some part of that goes to a community. I think it's a good balance. Yeah. And I think the other, I think and then another model that I've seen that I'm actually setting up right now, interestingly, part of that is a model whereby so we are getting a lot of different projects to come together, right? To do an initiative, right? So usually we will need a non-profit, right? But we're actually doing a DAO, right? And it's actually very interesting to see how many projects, I mean very prominent projects, right? Kind of like be very, very comfortable with the process. Right, actually they prefer that process because like there is no like a legality to it, right? Just like okay, we have everyone get their private keys and we just decide who to push and make approvals and stuff. So I think that it's also very interesting to see that how people in the space are so comfortable, with like setting up new structures and stuff. It's really cool. Yeah.
So I think we do need to wrap up now. We have less than 1 minute left, but thanks all for being part of the discussion. This is sort of, I guess, like an after discussion from the open source discussion. And if you haven't already, grab lunch. There is some food in the venue.
Resources that you think we should share? We've kind of compiled a lot of things from the conversations.
Yeah, there's actually an active Twitter thread now that is going through some of those links. There'll also be we'll be compiling a list. I'm putting that out there as well. Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe and give us a rating or comment if you enjoyed this content. This episode was brought to you by Santa and the unicorns at giveth.io. Remember, this podcast is made possible by the donations we receive from listeners like you. If you'd like to help support the podcast, you can do so by donating Ether at dattpodcast.com. That's DATT podcast.com. Please check the show notes for more information. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep decentralizing all the things.